Hi, David. How do you feel today?
How do I feel? I feel like I want to quit woodworking and take up sewing.
Whoa, slow down. Go back to the beginning.
Okay? It all started back in early July. My dad had found this chair on Facebook that turns into a ladder, and he'd asked if anybody could build it for him. Well, it didn't look that hard, so I immediately volunteered. Simple project, right? I could probably knock it out in a weekend and could make it out of some basic dimension lumber from the home improvement store. So I grabbed some boards and I got started. Now, I would never want anybody to know that I did this, but this is a safe space, right? I made a bad decision. I tried to resaw 2x6s on the table saw without building a high fence. I know, it was stupid. Running these boards through unsupported is a recipe for kickback, which it turns out, we'll get to that later. If you want to understand what's brought me here, you have to know something about how this chair is built. It relies mostly on 22.5-degree angles, and since that's half of 45, all the angles can be the same, and you don't have to worry about cutting the wrong angle anywhere. You're trying to make this shape that's kind of like a triangle with a thing sticking out of the end. I wanted to use exposed dowels to build it. Mostly because I like the way they look, but also because, come on, they're fun. And it's not like I have a domino joiner lying around. Dowels are kind of like a poor man's alternative to that, you know what I mean? Anyway, where was I? Because the planer wasn't cooperating with me, I figured the next best option was my homemade drum sander. A few minutes with that, and I had the sides of my chair. Next, I took those boards that I'd resawn earlier and glued on a seat. I was feeling really optimistic at that point. The oak dowels with the, pine, spruce fir, whatever it was, it looked good. All this happened over the course of a couple days. I'd underestimated how much work there was in putting this project together. There were glue-ups that had to dry, and remember, it was July. It was the hottest summer on record. Nobody could ever remember it being consistently that hot for so long. It was 110 degrees in the shop, so I had to pace myself. My workshop was a mess. There was sawdust everywhere. Tools were all on the floor. And I didn't have much of a chance to clean them up because it was so stinking hot in there that I had to work quickly. The next step was building the back of the chair. It's a ladder back design, so the chair is also a ladder, but the ladder back isn't part of the ladder. It's the back of the ladder. Okay, look, it was just more complicated than I had anticipated, okay? So I turned on a box fan right next to my head and mortised out some slots for the back, trying not to sweat on my work too much. I got to do some good hand tool work, and it makes you feel like a real woodworker. I was starting to believe my own hype. My dad was gonna be proud of me. He'd see why I love this so much and spend so much time doing it. At least I hope so. Yeah, that's funny when I think about it now. I really had no idea. Dad would like it fine. Even if he never knew how many days I spent refining shapes with a chisel, cutting dowels and slots with a handsaw, the roundovers, the sanding. The sanding. Beneath the seat, there's this little ledge that becomes a stair step when you flip it over into a step ladder, and I wanted it to look nice, so I cut dados for the ledge to slip in. If I'd thought ahead, I would have done them on the table saw, but you remember I'd already put that seat on, and I wasn't working with instructions, so since I had it assembled already, I had to cut those out with a handsaw, but, that's fine. I'm a real woodworker now, right? I can do that. So I glued up the ledge and thicknessed it on the sander, and after a quick dry fit, I took it to the table saw to get it dimensioned just like I wanted. The table saw, though, it was making a weird sound. So I was trying to be extra careful, but do you remember when I was telling you about the stupid resawing I'd done without a high fence? Yeah, somehow when I was being an idiot, everything worked out fine, but this time It just goes to show you that you can never plan an accident. Fortunately, I had my hands in a good position and I was using a push stick, so the only damage was to the board. But just as I was getting ready to build a zero clearance insert so that I could add a splitter and avoid that happening in the future, the whole table saw blew up. Well, I should say it fell apart. The belt came off along with the pulleys that carried it. That weird sound that I'd been hearing was actually a bent arbor. So now, with two of my most important tools down, I just quit for the day. I got some rest, and the next day, I was ready to soldier on. Everything I'd built so far was just the back section of the chair. I still had to build the front section, which was composed of two more weird triangle shapes, the rest of the seat, and another little step. Fortunately, I still had my old table saw as a backup. I hate that old saw. I call it Death Trap because it's a death trap, but it did get the job done, and soon I was ready for another glue up. The next day, I pretty quickly realized that something was wrong. I'd clamped it crooked, and now the glue was dry. Okay, well, I could fix that by cutting out the step and trying again. Then I tried putting the two halves of the chair together and realized the back section wasn't tall enough. You see, if you change one little thing in this chair, it throws off the geometry of everything else. It's all interdependent. When I was building it, I didn't account for the thickness of the seat, and that extra inch of material was enough to wreck the whole thing. I could have probably fixed that too, but seeing it then, I realized it was all just too small anyway. It was too much to fix.
And how did that make you feel?
Well, I was discouraged, of course, but then I thought about what I'd always been told. You go to school on the first one. And now that I knew the pitfalls, well, I was ready to build the best dadgum ladder chair the world had ever seen. I had some red oak that I'd been saving for something special, and I figured its time had finally come. It would make a beautiful chair. I went through much of the same process I'd gone through before, with a few changes based on my experience from the previous build. I decided to make a form for the triangle shape to make sure each piece was consistent with the rest, and I have this reminder in my shop posted where I can see it that says BTDJ. It stands for Build the Dadgum Jig, because I'm always looking for shortcuts instead of just doing the job the right way the first time. I used dowels to hold it all together again. My thinking was that I'd use traditional joinery methods wherever possible and no metal at all except for the hinge that holds it all together. So instead of looking for shortcuts like I usually do, I tried to do everything right, no matter how long it might take me. It was still hot in the shop too, but it was cooling off. I made sure to leave the back extra tall this time and planned to cut off any extra at the end once I was sure that I had enough material to not repeat the mistake I'd done on the first one. But despite all of that, I was getting tired. After working on this little novelty chair my dad had probably forgotten about months ago, it all felt just a little silly. If anyone had asked me then how I spend my free time, I probably would have just said something like, I build a chair. I build a chair. And they'd say something like, you mean you build chairs? I say, no, just one. And maybe someday I'll finish it. But still, it was some of the best woodworking I'd ever done. Even if I did make one mistake. You see, the two steps that make a ledge below the seat, they weren't on the same plane. And it wouldn't really affect the function, but it bothered me. And then, something horrible occurred to me.
No!
I built the whole thing backwards. When you build it correctly, The back part flips over and becomes half of the stepladder. But the way I built it, you couldn't flip it over because the back of the chair hits the seat.
That was several months ago. What did you do next?
I didn't do very much. I bought another really old table saw and used parts from it to fix the other really old table saw, cleaned the shop, picked up the tools, played with the kids, did some little projects with them, but I didn't really do any serious woodworking. I think I was just off the whole thing.
Well, would you like to know what I think?
Well, sure. I'd love to hear what you think.
I think you should embrace the suck. Woodworking isn't fun. Fun is watching Netflix or going for a walk on the beach. Woodworking is a hobby for bad people who know that they deserve to be punished. We deserve to be punished. That's why we spend 6 months building the same chair over and over again. So get on with it. Build it again.
You know, I think you're right. Thanks.
Anytime.
And so I finished it. It had taken over 6 months, and sure, it wasn't perfect, but it was close enough that only I could see the mistakes. And I'd learned a few things along the way. First, we don't always figure things out the first time. Sometimes we have to do it over and over and over again before we can get it right. Second, and this is huge, we grow in the process, not in the final product. You see, it's the mistakes that we make along the way that make us better craftsmen in the end and really probably make us better people too. Finally, never, under any circumstances, build a ladder chair. They're really stupid. Now, you can buy one on Amazon for about $100. I'll even leave you an affiliate link down in the description in case you really want to have one of these things, but I'm not recommending that. Now, I'm going to give it to my dad, and I'm sure that he's going to be grateful. Hopefully, we'll have a laugh about it together. But the chair is not comfortable, and the hinge thing, it tends to catch your pants when you get up. The ladder, it's not very stable. You have to lean it up against something if you really want to use it. And let's be real. There are some designs that just belong on the internet. That's what they were for, and that's where they need to stay. So, can we just make a deal? No more ladder chairs. Let's not build them. Let's not buy them. Let the ladder chair thing die here because it's stupid.
I think that was good.